So we'll call this one, what's happened to the vaccinated. So the first point that I want to make is people say all sorts of stuff, it's quite common for people to say things in order to misrepresent their own position. They'll say things that they know are not true. Sometimes they even end up trying to kid themselves. But what I can say is that if you study somebody's actions, you'll gain an insight into their thought processes, what they're thinking about a certain issue. And then also, if you study somebody's behaviour and actions, you'll get a very clear picture of what they're trying to achieve. And this is because when people do stuff, it's purposeful. People aren't random. They're purposeful individuals. They have particular goals, and their behavior is orientated towards achieving whatever their objectives are. So that's kind of like crucial. Most people don't understand that, but it's absolutely crucial that you do. That when people do stuff, that can give you a very, very clear idea about what they're thinking and what their objectives are. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing is a question to you guys, is that are you actually interested in what's going through the minds of the people that took part in the experiment? Now, obviously, we can't know for sure because no one's a mind reader, but we can actually, as I've said a minute ago, we can observe them, what they're doing and what they're saying, and from there we can gain an insight into what's going through their head. So if we just run through the things that you can maybe add to it in the comments, but things that I see is that they don't want to talk about their participation in the experiment. They pretend that it never happened. They just do not want to talk about it, do they? They pretend that it's not happened. They seem to be often kind of quite absent-minded, I find. And they're certainly not chipper anymore. Now, chipper is a funny kind of English phrase that means, well, they're not strutting around anymore. Like during the people's pantomime, they had their heads held up high, and they were very happy to conform, and they wanted to shame anybody and call them tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, and they were strutting. That's all gone now. They've lost that chipper that they once had. So if you put all of those things together, what does that imply? Does that imply that they're happy about what they did? For me, if somebody doesn't want to talk about something, it means it's pretty likely that they believe that they made a mistake, and they don't want to talk about it because they feel ashamed of themselves, what they did. They feel stupid. They behave, their actions, not wanting to talk about what they did, that implies to me that they believe that they've made a mistake. Because if they were still proud of what they did, they would still be crowing about it. They would still be chipper, but they're not. So that tells me that many of them realise that they screwed up epically and they backed the wrong side. I think building on that, I want to use a fancy word, paradigm. It's like a paradigm is like a collection of ideas and theories that form a big picture. And I think the kind of normie paradigm, academic agent uses this boomer truth regime kind of phrase to sum it up. But this idea that most of the people that went along with it, their paradigm was, all I need to do is to listen, repeat, and obey. And I think what their behaviour now, they seem almost like a little bit depressed, don't they? As if they've kind of given up almost. And that tells me that they know that their paradigm it's fallen over basically. What they thought, they now think, oh, I was wrong. And their kind of core beliefs have been challenged and shattered, basically, I would say. They're behaving like that. Third thing, we could call it empathy. I remember there was a French band called Air, and they had this song, How does it make you feel? So can you put yourself in somebody else's shoes? Can you think about how somebody else must feel? Like, how must it feel to have taken part in the medical experiment? I think it's something that, for us, I'm not going to use the PB phrase. I'm going to go with organic human, right? Because the PB phrase has got some kind of, like 1930s authoritarianism, like linked to it. I much prefer the term organic human or natural human, or now, if you took part in that experiment, you've seen people keeling over. You hear people talking about, oh, XYZ keeled over. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, there was somebody in football keeled over. This has got turbo cancer. This has got myocoinciditis. And then what they'll do is, like, they'll try to kind of imply that these kind of abnormal events have always happened. And I think what they're trying to do, these kind of lines of conversation that I've observed people doing, it's symptomatic of them being worried. They deep down, I think they know what's going on, but they're trying to think of anything else as an explanation for it. Like, oh, this has always happened. But deep down, for me, what I'm seeing is that they're behaving as though they're worried. And if I was in their position, would I be worried? It's a really interesting one to think about. No one's ever really said this on YouTube. Like, if, for us as organic humans, how would it feel to have failed the test and backed the wrong side? And, you've now modified. How would it feel? I don't know. It's like, could there be anything worse? I don't think so. Now imagine, many of the people that took part in the experiment were parents, and they also got their kids done, children done, who couldn't give informed consent, but they still took them along to the medical experiment. So again, like, put yourself in their shoes. Like, how would you feel? It's not worth thinking about. You'd feel, well, I can't think of anything worse than that, knowing that you've potentially harmed your own child. And most parents love their children more than anything else. Imagine that, knowing that you harmed your own kid because you were weak and you backed the wrong side, and you went for conformity rather than morality. And I think this explains why, like many people, they've put on a lot of weight during the lockups and afterwards. I kind of alluded to this earlier on in the video. I think many of them have given up on life. I don't think many of them are very happy. I think many of them are preoccupied. Lee from the Veritas Vincent channel, he basically talks about them driving badly. Well, of course, it's not really surprising, is it? Maybe it's affected their brain, because it damages blood flow to the brain, all the micro bumper clots and stuff like that. But then also there's the kind of the mental issue of, just imagine having to live with what you did, that you potentially poison your own child and yourself, and how much longer have you got left? Just imagine that. And I think for us as organic, humans, it's kind of, for us being in the other cohort, I think they're probably very envious of us. They've certainly not gained anything over us, because we survived the deadly, and they had the magic sauce, but they got that anyway. Imagine being in that position. How would you feel? So there are people that say, oh, well, the world's all unjust, and, you know, Mark Devlin, I know he's got another God video up and it'll be, you know, moaning about. But there is justice. There is justice. These people that took the low-level enablers are now paying a big price for what they did. And I think, you know, if we want to understand why many people seem to have given up, or they're bad-tempered, or they just seem absent-minded, or there's a reason for that. And it's not just kind of the fact that the potion crosses the blood-brain barrier. It might also be a realization, even if it's just a subconscious realization of what they did. And I think for us, if we can, we need to be empathetic towards that, because we can't really change anything now. What's happened has happened. But we can kind of just imagine how they must feel. So is there anything else that I wanted to say? Well, I suppose if you do come across a kind of a militant one, you know, you can ask them those questions that I phrased, you know. So you could ask them, well, what additional benefit did you get from having it over me who didn't? You know, that's a good one to shut them up. And then ask them how many they had. Yeah, and then, well, you say to them, well, that's all changed, hasn't it? You know, you were very keen to ask about other people's medical status. How does it feel to be questioning yourself about it? It's not so nice now, is it? And then another one, you know, the other one is just like, would you do it again? Have you learned anything? So yeah, that's all I want to say today. So God bless.